Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Maryland State Athletic Hall of Fame update for 2014. Mark on your calendar, November the 13th, it's a Thursday, at Michael's 8th Avenue, Glen Burnie. The 55th induction ceremony of the Maryland State Athletic Hall of Fame will be held. And once again, an impressive class is going to be inducted and enshrined that night. The Hall of Fame actually began in 1956. There were a couple years where there was not a banquet or a ceremony, and that's why it doesn't jive mathematically speaking, but it is the 55th induction ceremony. And this year's class is very impressive. The first class had Babe Ruth in it, so that's pretty tough to top. But we have a very impressive class once again. This year we have two outstanding female athletes, a gold medal Olympic winning swimmer in Beth Bospert, also a figure skater who was outstanding worldwide, Kimmy Meisner. They're both local girls. Two outstanding male athletes, each of whom played in the National Football League and Major League Baseball, in Brian Jordan from Milford Mill High School and the University of Richmond, and Tommy Brown from the University of Maryland. Also, Johns Hopkins lacrosse legend and icon, Bob Scott, who was outstanding as a player and a coach, will be inducted with the other four. And we also have a Lifetime Achievement Award, the John F. Stedman Award, that will go to the Papa Bear, Earl Banks, the late Earl Banks, the great coach at Morgan State, who coached 35 National Football League players. That was in his alumni. Pretty amazing, including Cleveland Browns Hall of Fame running back Leroy Kelly, and also Kansas City Chiefs Hall of Fame linebacker Willie Lanier. And with me to talk about this year's class and all the festivities and all the details like tickets and how much they're going to cost and all that, I leave all those important things to him, is Bernie Walter, the chairman of the Maryland State Athletic Commission. Maryland State Athletic Hall of Fame, excuse me. My name is Pat O'Malley, and I am a board member and also the MC of the event. Bernie, great once again. I think we've got a super class for this year.
I do too, Pat. I think the State Hall of Fame is a special operation. It's the official Maryland State Athletic Hall of Fame. The state legislature voted on that years ago, and we have that title, and we're pretty proud of that. It's to recognize the best athletes who've played in the state of Maryland, native born, and we have a secondary category called adopted, which are people that played here and then stayed here, contributed to the community, and did lots of really good things in their life. They didn't leave and go somewhere else.
People like John Unitas and Lenny Moore.
John Unitas, Lenny Moore, and Tommy Brown would be one that you could count in that category as well. It's a great event. We hold it at Michael's 8th Avenue in Glen Burnie. They're in the audience, so if people want to, go over and say hi to them or whatever, most of them are accessible. That's the way it's been ever since we've been doing it there, which is really it's a nice event. Tickets are $60. You can get them through PayPal. You can go on our website, which is MDSAHOF, Maryland State Athletic Hall of Fame. You can do that. Or if you don't want to do PayPal, you can call my home and we'll help you out. That's 410-859-0151.
And of course, the tickets include dinner and an open bar.
Open bar all night, starts about 6 o'clock, and we've been over by 9:30 pretty much. Cause these the inductees have not been up there and talked a long time. They're pretty impressed that they get a nice award like this. And what we do after the banquet is we'll show all their, we'll make plaques. We'll put those plaques up at Camden Yards on Utah Street. If you come in the south entrance of Utah Street and look to the left, on one of the walls, you'll see all the people's names who have been in the Hall of Fame. And then there's also display in Sports Legends in the basement of Sports Legends. And they have little circular things that you can roll, see a picture of who they are, and also get a little very brief bio that they're in there.
Now, who I failed to mention, because I wanted to actually concentrate a little bit more on this inductee, we have a very unique inductee this year. For the first time, we have a four-legged athlete, a non-human, going in and celebrated thoroughbred native dancer.
Right. We had a long discussion over like 2 years. Some of our board members were pretty emphatic that horse people think that the horses are athletes. They finally convinced us that was the right thing to do, and we've got Native Dancer. Native Dancer only lost one race. He lost the Kentucky Derby, and the jockey said that he was fouled twice and should have won. And otherwise, he's just one of the greatest horses ever.
Oh yeah, well that was really wild because he was 22-0 at that point in the Kentucky Derby, and back in 1953 when this occurred, that was the last leg of the Triple Crown. He could have gone out a Triple Crown winner, but unfortunately he lost that race. Now he died in 1967, was put to rest at Sagamore Farms in Glendon, Maryland.
Right.
And the Vanderbilts, of course, are involved.
Right. The Vanderbilt family owned a horse, and we've invited I think one of the grandsons to come to the banquet and accept the award. We're not sure if he's coming or not, but we hope he does.
And no doubt he was he was in the top 100 horses of the 20th century. Was just simply outstanding as far as horses are concerned, and I guess when you get right down to it, athletically speaking, horses are athletes.
Well, there are two horses from Maryland that have won 2 legs of the Triple Crown. Kauai King, is that how you say that? Kauai King?
Yes.
That horse is a son of a Native Dancer.
Native Dancer.
So
yeah.
the breed's there, but both were in Maryland. Both were bred here. We're pretty excited about breaking new ground, so to speak.
Yeah, I would say, and I got to give credit to Sandy McKee, the former Baltimore Sun sports writer, who was really behind, and she first nominated Native Dancer, and it caused a lot of discussion, a lot of interesting discussion, because I had known some 4-legged athletes, but they're not horses. So anyway, getting back to the other inductees, the 2 women are just simply outstanding. I mean, Kimmy Meisner was one of the greatest figure skaters ever, and I believe the first American and first lady to ever win titles in national competition, worldwide, and just the entire world.
I think the only thing she missed, she was an Olympic champion. She was an Olympian.
Yeah.
She won the 06 World Championship skating, and she was the 07 national champion, which is pretty impressive. She was also one of the first women to do a triple axel, which is one heck of a stunt.
Yeah, she's from Falston High School in Harford County. And then from Garrison Forest, Beth Botsford, a swimmer, who was a 2-time or a 2 gold medal winner in the 1996 Summer Olympics in Atlanta.
Right. She was a backstroker, and she won the individual medal for the gold, and then she also was on a relay team that won the gold medal. So that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, those 2 are definitely deserving. And then our 2 male athletes that played Major League Baseball and NFL football, in Brian Jordan and Tommy Brown from the University of Maryland. Now, you probably knew a lot about Tommy Brown.
Well, Tommy Brown played baseball on the same team I did at the University of Maryland.
Okay.
He was our first baseman. He batted .449, first team All-American. He also, when he was a freshman, he played football, basketball, and baseball. Just a great athlete. I know when he ended up playing with the Green Bay Packers that Vince Lombardi thought that he was the best athlete on the team. And he would have good days and bad days, but he was a terrific athlete. He played safety for the Packers. He was also a punt returner and a kickoff returner. Just a great athlete. And then when at Maryland, his last 3 years at Maryland, because you couldn't play varsity baseball, you couldn't play any varsity sports as a freshman. And his last 3 years at Maryland, he played football and baseball and was a star. Then he signed with the Washington Senators. He was a switch hitter. Played in the big leagues for a while.
About 63 games, first base in the outfield.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, he got sent back to the minor leagues, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And then he decided to stick with pro football, and he played on Lombardi's first 2 Super Bowl teams. He started at safety and was an outstanding athlete.
Yeah. And then, of course, he played the 1 year with the Redskins
Yeah.
at the end of his career, 5 with Lombardi. Well, you saw him and you were there. Was he a better baseball player at one time than he was a football player, or do you think it was pretty equal?
I don't know. He was such a good athlete. The thing at the time is that the NCAA rules were really different than they are today. At that time, you can only make 1 or 2 substitutions at a time. So most of the players that played NCAA football had to play 2 ways. Now, obviously, when you went from offense to defense, you took your quarterback out. I think you could take one other player out. But Tommy played safety for Maryland and also was a wide receiver and sometimes a running back. But he was a great athlete. Baseball, I just respect how good he was. I mean,
He was an All-American.
Well, he could do everything. I mean, he could run, he could throw, he could hit, had some power. You know, he's definitely a big league player, and he stayed here for a while. I think if he'd have focused on baseball, he'd have had a much longer career. But he was a 2-sport athlete, and he decided to stick with football.
Moving to Brian Jordan, in all the years that I covered high school sports, and I covered a lot of the Baltimore metro area on Caltech cable TV, which later became Comcast. And we used to have a show called Maryland Sports Magazine. And on that show, Brian Jordan was on there several times in his senior year. His senior year, he was 38 for 38 in stolen base attempts,
Really?
which is pretty amazing. He was pretty fast, he was quick, he knew how to play, and he was a very intelligent young man and very impressive to talk to. I know I really relished opportunities to interview him on cable TV because he was so good.
Right.
And he would have a lot to say and explain things and explain them well. And what a great athlete. And then he goes and he gets drafted by the Cardinals in baseball.
Right.
And that, I believe, it was after he came out of Richmond and he was playing in the National Football League or getting ready to play in the National Football League. And the Cardinals talked him out of, they wanted him to give up football and concentrate on baseball, which is what he did. Because he played in the secondary in Atlanta with Deion Sanders at one time. And, of course, he did something Deion never did. He was on a Pro Bowl team as an alternate, but he was on the Pro Bowl team. And he also played in a Major League All-Star game, played 15 seasons, had a career batting average of .282. Deion, of course, Neon Deion, he loves himself. Well, he did not play in a Major League All-Star game. Right. He was, no doubt a great athlete. But Brian Jordan did a little bit more than he did. And when I talked to Brian recently, I said something to him about that, and he got a kick out of that. And,
sure.
And he remembers those days. But the Cardinals talked him out of it, and then he ended up playing 15 seasons in the major leagues with 5 different teams, and mainly the Cardinals along the way.
Well, he was here in high school. I don't know if you remember this or not, but he was a Crown All-Star.
Yes.
And he played in I think
it might have been the first game.
Camden Yards, I think. What year did he get out of high school?
He was in the 80s, so he played at Memorial Stadium.
Right? Yeah, it was Memorial Stadium because I remember that day.
He was in either the first or second Crown game.
Yeah, he was early on with that.
Yeah.
But a terrific athlete. There's no question about that.
Yeah, from Mill. And then just recently, Keith Mills and I did all-decade teams for 5 decades, and then we picked an overall team, and we had him on the overall team at the very end for 50 years, and we had him leading off in our starting lineup in center field, and then Ripken batting second, and Teixeira, and so on.
That's why you're a good newspaper guy and not a good lineup maker. You don't put Ripken second in your batting.
Well, you had no choice.
I'm kidding.
Where else are you going to put him in that situation? I didn't want to put him 8th or 7th.
Right.
I thought about moving somebody else up to second, but we were kind of stuck with that.
I bet you were. There's no doubt about it.
Oh, my. But, and then, of course, we have Bob Scott, who is a lacrosse legend at Johns Hopkins, a revered lacrosse legend and icon. People love him there. He was just a great coach and a great player. Played on a national championship team at Hopkins in '52, was an All-American midfielder, and then, of course, later became the coach and had an incredible record and won 7 NCAA championships.
I think people don't understand how good a lacrosse player he was.
Yeah.
His coaching greatness overshadowed anything he did on the lacrosse field. And some people say, well, he's getting in because he was a coach. That's not true. You're an All-American, and you're the captain of the team, and you are also on a national championship team. That's a lot of good credentials for anybody.
Yes.
And Bob Scott was active in this organization for a long time.
Right.
When he was the athletic director at Hopkins, he hosted a lot of the events that we had as far as meetings and things like that. But he was one of the guys that kept this thing alive. It's not an easy thing to do, and we're looking for people to support us. If somebody wants to help out, let us know. We'll be at the dinner, and they can come see us, and we can talk about it.
Yeah, or they can call you at 410-859-0151.
That's right.
That's right. Or email you at Bernie.
Bernie_Walter at broadstripe.net.
Good. We're glad. I hope that you do. You either call Bernie or email him because he has nothing else to do.
Just like Pat.
At this point of his life. Now, of course, Bob Scott also, too, was not only involved, he was involved at a time when Chester O'Sullivan was the chairman from like 1963 to 96. Now, I know you're not going to go that long because you'll probably be gone in a few years. But
thank you.
Anyway, how long have you been the chairman now? 7 years, 6 years? 6 or 7
I
years?
think 5.
Yeah, but Chester was really involved, and of course Bob Scott and
next was Jack
Scarbath and Vince Bagley. Yeah.
Was he the chairman?
No, he was never the chairman.
Oh yeah,
never chairman.
Jack Scarbath was the chairman, and he was the All-American football player out of Poly and the University of Maryland. He was runner-up for the Heisman Trophy.
That's right.
Billy Vessels won the Heisman Trophy back in the 50s, and this was when Jim Tatum had the great football teams at Maryland, and they ran the split tee offense, and Scarbath was just a giant.
Oh, he was. And that's a really interesting tidbit that you just threw out there. It's something that I think a lot of people don't realize, that he was number 2 in the Heisman vote, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah. I remember when that vote came, and I was so disappointed, of course, being a Maryland fan. I was hoping that he would get that. And today running backs don't get that award. The quarterbacks do. And today he probably would have got that award.
And, of course, Jack is in our Maryland State Athletic Hall of Fame, rightfully so.
Right.
Great athlete. Now, the John Stedman Award goes to someone who has contributed more than just coaching or playing or writing and been involved. He's just been really involved in things and really cared about the people in the Baltimore metro area community.
Well, it's basically the Hall of Fame is for athletes.
Right.
And there's a lot of people who've done a lot of good things, coaches and media people, whatever. And we were looking, how could we recognize these people? Because they would come up and we'd say, well, he's got those credentials, but the credential he lacks, he wasn't an athlete in the state of Maryland. He's not born here. So how do we recognize those people? So John Stedman, who's the great sports writer, editor for the News American
and the Sun.
And the Sun, for both of them. He was a great guy, and we just thought we'd use his name and recognize these people. So the list is pretty impressive.
Oh, no doubt. Vince Bagley, one of the most recent ones, and of course last year Sam Lacey,
right,
outstanding writer with the Afro-American.
Earl Banks has passed away, of course.
Yes.
And his wife will accept the award.
Oh, that's very nice, yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, he died in an automobile crash in 1969, which is really a shame because he was still contributing to the Baltimore community and helping kids. But to have coached 35 players that went on to the National Football League is pretty amazing. I think his career record was 96, 33, and 2. He won 2 bowl games and lost 1 in his time. From 1963 to 76, I believe it was. And during that time, he won 7 conference championships. And he was a great leader of men. He had a great reputation.
Well, back when he was coaching, integration really hadn't happened as far as major integration hadn't happened as far as athletics is concerned. And then when the big Division I schools started recruiting Afro-American players, then Morgan was a small school and couldn't compete with, with the Southeast Conference and the Florida States and Clemson's and places like that anymore.
Yeah, and of course they called him Papa Bear. Also, one of his players was Bob Wade, who played 1 year with the Steelers.
Oh, really?
In the National Football League. Yeah, it was back in the 60s. And Bob Wade, of course, went on to become the great Dunbar coach, coached at Maryland for a short time, and now is in administration with Baltimore City Athletics. Now, once again, could you remind people of what the tickets are and how they can obtain them?
Well, first of all, everyone's invited. This is open. Anybody wants to come, and you can do it through PayPal, and you go to our website, which is MDSAHOF, Maryland State Athletic Hall of Fame. If you don't want to go through PayPal, you can call my home, 410-859-0151. Tickets are $60. The table of 10 is $600. Whether you want to come by yourself or whatever. And my wife arranges the seating. So if you're interested in supporting a particular person, we'll try to sit you near them. Depends how many tables or whatever per person. But we expect anywhere between 300 to 500 people. It's a pretty good event. Open bar starts, it'll be open by 6 o'clock, and it goes all evening. It's a real open bar, and so there's liquor as well as beer and wine. And then there's a dinner, and then there's excellent desserts. Michael's has the greatest desserts going on. They really are good. So, and we'll probably have a silent auction. We'll get a few items that maybe you might be interested. If you're a sports collector, we've got that going. So there's a lot of things going on, and I think the biggest thing is that you'll hear these people accept an award, and oftentimes they'll say some really incredibly interesting things.
Yes.
It's just memorable words that I mean, some of these things apply to kids. Kids are welcome. We certainly hope that we're a family-oriented event. We try hard to make sure that happens, and we've been pretty fortunate that way.
Yeah, and also you mentioned this earlier, but I want to reiterate on it again, is the fact that we're always looking for new members. We've had some really wonderful nominations the last few years, and we know that there are more out there. And if some other people would get involved and join our board and our group, I'm sure that this will continue for a very, very long time.
Well, let me say one really important thing about that is that, first of all, you can go to our website and you can, there's a nomination form on there, and we will look at every one of those nominations and consider those. I think the one misconception that I've seen with people who are nominating athletes or whatever, first of all, sometimes they don't nominate athletes. They nominate coaches, high school, college, whatever, and that's not what we're about.
Yeah.
We're about athletes. And secondly, is it if you looked at the list of people who are on that Hall of Fame, and you did a little bit of research, because you can look at some names and not even have any idea who they were. But when you got Babe Ruth and Jimmy Fox in the first class, and you've got the first All-American quarterback ever in the history of college football, and he was from Princeton, and his name's on the list, and people look at this name and say, come on, he didn't play football. Well, yeah, Edgar Allan Poe played football, but not the writer. This is one of his nephews with the same name.
Yeah.
And you see that, and some people think it's a silly mistake. It's not. He was the first All-American quarterback ever back in 18, I've forgotten the years, but whatever. It's good trivia like that, and just all kind of stuff that's really a lot of fun. Going back personally and researching some of that information was really enlightening.
And we like to tell our viewers, too, that even if they don't have the time or can't get involved, if they've got a good nomination, to please contact us through our website, which Teresa Vermillion has done an outstanding job with.
She's the best.
And contact us that way and let us know about that individual and someone that you think should be in.
Well, we want to include them all if they're good enough. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Might take us some time.
Even four-legged athletes.
Yes. I'm going to nominate the Terrapin for University of Maryland. I think he's world class.
Oh, my. But once again, the date for the Maryland State Athletic Hall of Fame in 2014 is November the 13th. It's a Thursday It will be at Michael's 8th Avenue in Glen Burnie. Tickets are $60 for dinner and an open bar. If you want more information, contact Bernie and Barbara, his wife, at 410-859-0151. And any other information, of course, you can get off the Maryland State Athletic Hall of Fame website, mdsahof.com. Yes, and that's it, and you can get more information on it. We thank you for joining us here on this update of the Maryland State Athletic Hall of Fame. I'm Pat O'Malley for Bernie Walter. So long, everybody.